Hi, everyone. Welcome to Entrepreneurship by Design with Dr. C. I'm so glad you're here with us today because we have a phenomenal guest with us, Mackenzie Armstrong. Mackenzie is a former educator turned Pinterest strategist. In the words of Johnny from Dirty Dancing, nobody puts baby in a corner. Instead of being the best kept secret with hidden content in the corners of your website and social, Mackenzie teaches coaches and entrepreneurs with blogs and podcasts to fill their audience with ideal clients using Pinterest. She believes that Pinterest is an underutilized strategy for most businesses, especially coaches and podcasters. Feel relieved and confident using content you've already got and everything you create in the future to reach the right people without spending all your time posting. Thank you so much for being here today, Mackenzie. It is such a pleasure to have you. And I would love for you to just dive into your journey, how you got here today, and then we can go a little bit deeper.
Sure. So thank you for having me. So a little bit of background on me is I started out my career as an elementary education teacher and decided to move out of the 9-to-5 realm once I had my first little one. And thank God it was before COVID because I could not have been teaching during COVID time. Like that would have been insane. So then I went from teaching in the classroom to teaching online because I was always a little iffy about, I've never done anything online before, business wise. So it kind of helped me get my feet wet a little bit. So I started teaching English to Chinese students. And then I dove headfirst into becoming a virtual assistant. And at that point, I was really excited. I was gung ho. I was really trying to figure out where I wanted to be because being a VA is super general. So I decided that I really didn't care for social media. So I decided to dive headfirst into Pinterest and niche down into becoming a Pinterest strategist, which is what I do today. I solely focus on helping entrepreneurs grow their visibility and audience using Pinterest.
Oh, I love it because Pinterest is not something people talk about more so now. I think a couple years back, it was very popular. I mean, I use it regularly, but I feel like a lot of people don't talk about it. I'm so curious because I know you said you transitioned from teaching online to Chinese students and then moved into Pinterest, but what really inspired you to transition from being an educator to becoming a Pinterest strategist for coach and entrepreneurs in particular?
For sure. So with teaching, my favorite part about teaching was the fact that each student is different. And it was kind of like you had to do your due diligence into figuring out how that student specifically was able to retain information, was learning. So that way I could create individual plans or individual ways of reaching those children. So that's what I really like about Pinterest because it's a visual search engine. You can really use the creative aspect of your pins and your graphics to speak to different types of people, which is awesome. And I really liked that with Pinterest, it was very much straightforward. Like it's not so much conversational like it is with other social media platforms. Like you're not having that conversation. With Pinterest, you're really kind of getting to the nitty gritty and like saying like, this is what this content is about. And if it's going to help, if it's going to benefit you, please click through and go to my website and view the whole blog post or podcast. Because ideally, like that's also what drew me to Pinterest. Was Pinterest's main focus is to inspire people in whatever direction they want to go. So it could be like business, it could be health and wellness, it could be, DIY projects, which is like, your stereotypical Pinterest, what you hear about Pinterest. But Pinterest is there to really meet people where they're at and to really get them to where they want to be. They want to inspire people and they want to get people that information that's going to really help them, which I feel like I lean towards anyway because of being an educator. Like that's ultimately what my job is as a teacher, is to make sure that the students are able to get where they need to go and learn what they need to learn. And that's really what drew me to Pinterest.
Pinterest is such a different social media platform, but like what you're saying, it's really not the conversational aspect right away as it is on like Instagram or Facebook or other platforms, but really being able to take it and go whichever direction you want because there's so many opportunities. Because it can be really overwhelming when you first like go on it. I remember the first time I did, I was like, how do you even navigate this thing? Because it can be a little bit unconventional in that regard because there's just so much out there. But I'm curious, when it comes to the differences between Pinterest and other social media platforms, how do you reach your ideal clients? Like, how do you do that?
Technically, Pinterest isn't, I know everybody lumps Pinterest in with social media, but technically it's not.
Right.
Technically, it's a search engine. So your audience is really driven by keywords, by SEO. So people are actively searching for the specific things that you are teaching about or you're discussing in your content. So you're really able to find that ideal audience because they're using the keywords or the language that you use within your content. So you're really able to kind of weed out the people that are like perusing, if you will, because people are actively searching for specific things. And like that's what I love about Pinterest is like it's the top of your funnel. So you're able to draw in people with the keywords that you're using and get them to your website. And then once you're there, you can get them to like, know, and trust you by capturing their email and adding them to your list. So that way you can nurture them through your email sequence. And that really helps you warm up your audience. But you're casting a net in a pool of people that are actively searching for the content that you're providing, which is great because you're really going to be able to hone in your audience and who you're talking to.
Yeah, no, and that makes perfect sense. And I think it's just very underutilized. And I'm curious, why do you believe that it is a strategy that most businesses might not be using?
A few things. Well, because first off, I feel like people think that Pinterest is something that is a whole nother platform to learn. And yes, it can be daunting, but once you get in the swing of things, it takes an exponentially less amount of time on the Pinterest platform than it does with any other social media platform. So you're not actively engaging with your audience on Pinterest. You're putting your content out there for it to be searched for. You're not having to have that conversational piece like we were talking about earlier. And also I think that it's a slower grow. Like it's not something that's going to like instantly, become viral. I mean, hey, if you can do that, that's awesome, but that's not generally like, what happens. But with that being said, I feel like people don't understand that like with Pinterest, it's adding longevity to your content. You're putting it out there on the Pinterest platform and it's able to be searched whenever your audience is in need of that content. So like with Facebook and Instagram, your posts are buried by the feed or if the algorithm lets it be seen by your ideal audience. Whereas with Pinterest, people are actively searching and, like using the stereotypical cookie recipe that you might look for on Pinterest, that recipe might have been put out in like 2017, but it's still generating traffic. It's still up it's up high on the feed because, or the search, because it hits all those keywords that you're looking for. It hits all that SEO. So you're really able to breathe life into your content and it's not being buried on social media platforms or even your website. Because how many times have you gone to like view someone's podcast or look at their blogs? You're not starting in the middle. You usually start at the end, you start at the beginning, but like this helps you kind of really be able to grab in the middle of somebody's content list and pull out the information that you need, which then they get to like, know, and trust you. They get to start looking at your content because it was beneficial. And then you really kind of get to nurture that audience.
That's true. And, I feel like the same for YouTube. I hear from so many different YouTubers, like they created a video 5 years ago that's still like creating revenue because it's something that's still very relevant to what they're needing. Just like a cookie recipe, for instance, people are always making cookies in some form or capacity. But I'm curious because I know with coaching and podcasters in particular, what do you think the advantages that it does offer them in particular when it comes to using Pinterest?
With coaches and things like that, because most of the time, all the coaches that I've worked with have that content. They're putting out content for their audience. Whereas if they're able to put it on Pinterest, it's searchable. You're able to really get get seen by your audience because they're actively looking for those topics that you're discussing. And then also, I think that like that's a great way, especially like with coaches, people want to know what you're like before they reach out to you or before they start to work with you. So you're really able to get them involved in your content and see the type of work that you're putting out to see if they're a good fit for you.
Mm-hmm. No, that's very true, because people want to know who they're going to be working with, and the personality types might not be great. Sometimes it is, but you can get a feel for somebody's, at least a little bit of their personality from social media, like at least the front end.
For sure.
And the consistency, of course. But how does utilizing Pinterest allow businesses to leverage their existing content and save time on creating new content? I know you touched on that, where it can be repurposed years later, but what does that look like in real time?
So like say you have like evergreen content, because, you could have created a post or a blog post or a podcast 2 years ago. That's still relevant information. So with being able to repurpose that, is you don't have to rewrite the blog or redo the blog or the podcast. All you'd have to do is create new pins for it and send it out to Pinterest, and it breathes new life into it. You're able to touch on different keywords, or say like 2 years ago they were using different verbiage than they are now within the niche that you're talking about. Then that's something that you can refresh your description, which is only 500 characters, if that. And, half of it's a call to action, like please click through and continue consuming the content, but also you're really able to, another thing that I would say is, especially with coaches and things like that, like we are so in our niche that we talk about it a certain way, but that does not necessarily mean that our audience speaks of it that way. So really kind of diving into your audience, like your audience avatar, things like that, and to really kind of do those interviews and see how your audience is speaking about the content that you talk about. And you can use your own verbiage in your content, but when creating, on Pinterest, use the words that people are actively searching for, because ultimately, you don't want to be throwing spaghetti at the wall and hopefully it lands somewhere. You want to use what, like, don't reinvent the wheel. Like, use what your people are talking about, how your people are talking, and implement that in your 500 character description and title, so that way you can reach those people.
Man, I'm learning so much, because I didn't really know too much about Pinterest, but I feel like my eyes are just like widening. I'm like, oh, tell me more. But I think it's so important to realize there's different ways we can go about things, especially because Pinterest, I feel like, is so underutilized, because it's not being pushed as much as the others, but it's also not a social media platform. It's a search engine, which I'm glad you clarified that. And that is a big difference too. But what are some of the misconceptions or myths about Pinterest that you often come across, and how do you debunk them?
So my biggest thing is, people think that it's going to consume so much time. They're already spending hours on Facebook. They're already spending hours on Instagram. But in reality, once you have your account optimized and you have your strategy in place, you only really have to spend 4 to 5 hours a month on your Pinterest account. You don't have to go into your Pinterest account every day like you do with other platforms to help boost that algorithm. You're really able to kind of like set it and forget it almost. And I think that another thing is people are constantly thinking that they have to take the time to constantly keep creating posts, when in reality, they're just already using the content that they already have, and they're using the language that they're already using. You're not creating that post that takes maybe 20-30 minutes to write, and then you have to create the graphic. Essentially, all you're doing is creating the graphic. And if you have a set of pin graphics that you use as templates, that's even better. It's plug and play. So where you can just kind of set it and forget it, and you don't have to be there all the time, which I think is a big, like, people don't have time. People don't have the ability to spend all their time on social media. They have to grow their business. Right. So, but I just think that generally it's about that time, and use what you got. Not just because you put out a post a year ago doesn't mean that the information is not valuable or useful. You know what I mean? So just really utilize the content that you already create. Don't make more work for yourself. Work easier. Make it easier for yourself. So
Yes, well said. And I do think it's like where our energy is going, because a lot of times we're like, well, I don't have the capacity to add one more platform, one more thing, but it's just repurposing that content. That's what like I had to learn with all the social media platforms I'm on. I'm like, okay, it's the same piece of content. To give you an example, with like my podcast, my YouTube channel, I would post different clips on each different platform. And somebody was like, Caroline, that is way too much. Just post the same one because not everyone's seeing the same thing. I'm like, oh my gosh, it saved me hours of time because I'm a one-woman show at the moment. But I'm curious because I know you work with a lot of coaches and podcasters in particular. Could you share maybe one or two or even three success stories that have significantly benefited from implementing the Pinterest strategies?
For sure. So for one, my client, Courtney, I was able to save her 8 hours a week by getting her Pinterest strategy cohesive to where it was just like a well-oiled machine. So she had 8 extra hours a week to implement on other things in her business, whether that's social media or, just doing the nitty-gritty work of our actual business. Another great story that I have is that I started working with a teacher who creates digital products and is also a blogger as well. And that's what I focused on, was pushing out her blog to illuminate her digital products. So we started working together in October, and then by January, from the previous January, her blog posts had gone from 12,000 hits to 41,000 hits. So when it came down to it, 1 in 5 people were going to her blog post from Pinterest, which is like, that's like 20% of the people that are coming from Pinterest. And that was just after a few months of working together. So you really have an ability to build your audience to showcase your content, which is awesome.
And that's what it's about, right? And I love those numbers too. It just shows that there's so much effectiveness and less time and energy being put on trying to create new content or getting things out. But when you have it systemized and know, okay, I can post this and it's going to drive traffic back to where I want to be, and spending more time working on blogs or clients or any capacity or podcasts, where your energy is going. And how do you stay up to date with the latest trends or changes on Pinterest? Because there's a lot of algorithms that change on social media platforms. What does that look like for Pinterest?
So Pinterest really doesn't have as many algorithm changes as other platforms. Now, I will say like maybe once a year, they'll roll out a new feature, which kind of like, scrambles everything up for a bit. But just like any other, the platforms relearning. But ultimately, it's just that keyword, it's keyword driven, which is great because you're able to really use those analytics and that data to get your content out there and to really decide where you want your content to go. It's just so underutilized and I feel like that's another thing is I'm always like, trying to teach people the benefits of Pinterest to really, because like, everybody's like, yay, Facebook, but there's also like, and Facebook, don't get me wrong, it's a great reach, but it's just different, which is awesome. So
yeah, and every platform is different. It has its unique spin on it, but I think it's just kind of bringing light, it is bringing light to a different platform that could really generate great connections and be able to bring them back to your website or your blog or your podcast or clients, being able to use it as a search engine that it was created to use. And I mean, I find amazing things on there for so many different capacities, but what advice would you give coaches and entrepreneurs who are just starting out to explore Pinterest as a marketing tool for their business?
So ultimately, the first thing that you want to do is make sure that you have a business account and you connect your website to your Pinterest account, because that's where you're going to really get those juicy analytics. You're going to really be able to see who's leaving your account, when they're leaving it, what content they're clicking on. And then ultimately, just make sure that your keywords are on point. Go through wherever there's text on Pinterest, you can add keywords. You can add it to your title that you have your account set to, your profile descriptions, your board descriptions, your titles, everything like that is a blank canvas to utilize for keywords to draw on those people. Because I don't know, like when you search in Pinterest, it brings up content and then it also brings up profiles, which is awesome because that's something that's, it's all relevant. It's all usable real estate.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I definitely didn't know some of that. And what do you think, in your opinion, just from all the people that you've helped and different coaches, podcasters, blogs, what is the biggest advantage or opportunity that Pinterest has to offer when it comes to building your business, but why prioritize it in your marketing efforts?
Well, first, there's just the fact that it adds longevity to your content. It makes your content relevant because it's being searched. And then the fact that it's a free platform. And like when I do Pinterest for people, for clients, I'm not doing paid ads. This is all strictly organic. So it's something that, especially if you're a new entrepreneur and you're new to either, blogging or podcasting, you're really able to put your content out there freely. And you can really see the potential that it has to grow. So ultimately, this is all on a free account. There's nothing paid. It's just putting out your time. So if you can put that effort in the beginning of optimizing your account, then you're really going to see a step in the right direction. You're really going to see your audience gravitating towards your website ultimately.
I love it. So much insights. And just with all the insights you have for Pinterest, but also building your own business, what are maybe 2 or 3 tips that have been really beneficial for you that you've learned along this journey?
The biggest thing would be, when you start out as an entrepreneur, you really want to like have a huge pool of people that you can pull from. But really, ultimately, I didn't really start to grow and see traction in my business until I really niched down. And that's in like the aspect of like the tasks that I'm doing, like just Pinterest, but also the people that I work with. So if you can really niche down your whatever tasks you're doing, and then also like the types of people that you want to work with, you're really able to kind of draw in, and you can really start to speak to those people, which is, I think, the biggest thing that I wish I would have started earlier on in my business.
That's a good one. That's a really good one. Yeah, I feel like I should have done that too, but it's like, you hear niche down. And a lot of times it's so hard because you might be passionate about multiple things, but when we're able to really do that, things transpire. And I'm curious, were there any obstacles or bumps in the roads that you hit in building your business?
Well, first off, that confidence, you know what I mean? Just being able to really think that like this is something that is attainable for me, as like considering like, I was always that 9 to 5 push into that type of career. And it was very much of a mindset shift when I decided to go full in on my business, because things don't always work out the way you want them to, but then also sometimes that also helps you, figure out, and like, sometimes I feel like when there's obstacles in the way, you're really able to like decipher which path you're supposed to take. So I think that was really something that was a roadblock for me, and not even like just the obstacle itself, but getting the mindset of like, okay, things can be difficult and it's okay, we can persevere through. So I think just that the mindset of like doing something without a boss telling you to do it.
Yeah, it's definitely a transition, I will say, from just my own personal experience. And, I know you have a lot of other things going on outside of running your successful business. I know you're a mother too. What has it been like, motherhood and integrating entrepreneurship together?
Well, first off, just the lack of sleep that goes with motherhood is definitely something to tackle, but really kind of just getting into like what works for my family, like what works for me and my kids and my husband doesn't necessarily always work for everybody else. So just kind of figuring out where everything fits in. And then like I do a lot of work on nap time and a lot of work at night, because that's the point of me, that why I wanted to be home, was to be home with my kids. So being actively engaged in, school and things like that is something that I feel is what is beneficial for me and my family. So like I kind of, everything has a place. So just finding the best times to work and just juggling everything all together. And the great thing is being an entrepreneur at home, I'm able to really maneuver my schedule, that if something comes up, because life happens, that I'm able to do whatever I need to do. I don't have to call out of work, or I don't have to create sub plans because my kid's home from school sick, so it's just kind of, it's a lot more work to be home working with kids, but it's also freeing also. So
Yeah, because you're not confined to a certain schedule where you have to clock in and out or have to report to someone. You have that flexibility and it works best for you and your family too. And I hear that from a lot of mompreneurs in particular, of being able to be home, because it can be really taxing of being able to call off when your kid's sick, and you can't control that. That's life, and life is always going to be happening. But I love that you've been able to maneuver it to work for your schedule and your family and what feels right and what's best for you guys. And even a lot of things happen behind the scenes in business, just like life is happening. But what are some of the tools that you've used to create your business on the back end?
So I really like to keep myself organized within Trello. Like that's what I use
Mhm.
for my business and clients, is using that tool. But ultimately just kind of, and like I would say my calendar as well, because I think that that's something that was super tasking in the beginning, was trying to keep everything situated and straight. But once I was able to kind of get down a method of scheduling everything out, and that's like work and personal life things all together, that I was able to get it all in one spot. That was something that was really beneficial and kind of helped me move forward, because I wasn't scrambling to try to figure out what I had to do, or I wasn't missing tasks and things like that. So
Yeah, keeps it all in one place, very organized. You can see it all, and everyone's moving in the right direction.
yes.
And just even moving in the direction of the next year or so, what are your goals or aspirations for your business and seeing it expand and grow?
So I am currently, so I just launched VIP days a few months ago. So I'm really kind of diving into that. And then also I have created, or I am creating a Pinterest course for entrepreneurs to DIY it themselves, for people that, either they don't have the ability to hire it out, or they just don't have the time to do it.
Mhm.
So kind of where it's like a self-paced, quick, like no fluff, this is the information you need, and get it rolling. Because, once you have all of that content, or once you have all of that, the account set up and everything like that, it's kind of smooth sailing from there. So just kind of getting in front of the back end of Pinterest and getting everything set up.
I love it. Well, I so appreciate everything you've shared today, Mackenzie, but where can people find you, find your services? We're going to link everything below, but if you could let us know too.
For sure. So definitely everything about me is on my website at armstrongvirtualsolutions.com. And I usually hang out the most on LinkedIn, and that's also Armstrong Virtual Solutions. So that's where I post regularly with tips and tricks for Pinterest and things like that. So if you're looking to dive into Pinterest, you can definitely find some beneficial information if you're DIYing your journey. So definitely check out my LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mackenzie, for just being so transparent in your journey, the ups, downs, everything in between, but why Pinterest is so critical in being able to build your business in a way that works best for you. But I so appreciate all the insights you shared today.
Of course.
And make sure to like, subscribe, comment below what was the biggest takeaway from Mackenzie today. I'm sure she would love to see that comment, and we will see you on the next episode.